Yeah, I'm Callum Dara. I'm from UKIP Reading, and I'm interviewing Ben Walker. Ben.
Hello.
Okay. How did you get involved with UKIP, and what's your background like with politics?
Okay, so I joined UKIP in 2011, and pretty much because I was involved with the Conservative Party then. However, I've been a UKIP member much longer than I ever have been a Conservative member. But the reason I got involved with UKIP was because it was a party that I felt represented me properly. I mean, I'm not this hard and fast Conservative. That was never me. I've always been a small C Conservative, someone who believes in the state, believes in, the royals, the armed services, all of those things that you generally, you think a Conservative voter would vote for. But then my background is also very socialist. My granddad, for example, was a shop steward at Rolls-Royce, which is close to where I live. So it's kind of diverse, and I pick and choose kind of what I like. And UKIP, I felt, represented me. And I felt that it was a party that was going somewhere. And actually, at that point, in the years that followed, it kind of did. That's why I joined UKIP. It's a party that's not the norm, is it? It's the one that kind of talks about the things that people kind of want to try and talk about, but maybe in some respects don't have the courage to do so.
I don't want to linger on it because, it's your past and everything, but when you're in the Conservatives, because I do wonder, what was the thing that made you jump and say, this is for me, UKIP's for me, and also you say it's not the norm. What is actually like working in the Conservatives, and because I've heard stories of people getting kicked out from being chairs just for sharing memes and things like this.
Yeah.
Which is why I think they're so awful.
It is vile. As an organisation, they are vile. I always used to be quite close to our current MP where I live now. And I guess I consider myself a friend, not now, but we were. And what they do is that anybody who has any sort of talent or drive and wants to sort of move on, if someone feels threatened by that, they'll suppress you. Or if you are talking about things that doesn't toe their line, they'll suppress you. Or, like you quite rightly said, they'll get rid. And that's very much what they're like. And it's I didn't like that. When I was a councillor for them and a district councillor, I was always going against them. I wouldn't go with the whip because half the time what they were trying to vote through was awful. And it didn't represent people. And that's essentially why I got involved in politics. For me, it's all about people. And right at the bottom, everyday people. That's what politics is about. But unfortunately, in some respects, it doesn't represent people, and that's wrong. And I guess that's why I chose UKIP.
I mean, this forms in with your grassroots approach that you've been pushing very hard, because I'm really interested in this because there is no structure really to UKIP. You are right about this. And I was wondering, has there ever really been a structure to UKIP? Because I'm relatively recently joined the party. Yeah. So was it back in the day, or was this all or nothing?
There has always been the structure that we've got now, which kind of gets mentioned in our constitution and party rulebook. But the structure's always been fairly loose. And what you'll also find is that if key players drop out of that structure, it starts to crumble and collapse. And obviously we've seen that quite a lot in recent time, over the last couple of years, if you like. So the structure's there, it's not used properly. But I think, if I'm lucky enough to be elected leader, that has to be our focus. We kind of consolidate the structure we've got. We get people on board that we kind of might have been losing. We start to unite around really interesting policy ideas. Things that are going to resonate with not only our own membership, but obviously the general public. Because like when I joined UKIP, it was because we were a political party and we wanted to succeed at the ballot box. I didn't want to be a member of a street protest party. I want to be in a party that's political, has great ideas, visionary, different, and wins.
How does it, because can I ask you, because I've just basically tried to rebirth the Reading branch because it's disappeared. And so what does it look like for a chairman or, the secretary of the committee at every branch? What does your grassroots plan directly do for them? Because at the moment you get nothing. It's just good luck.
No. The first thing is that there has to be an improvement in communications. We have an array of different people who are members. Now, obviously what we want to try and do, because of the amount of money it costs or doesn't cost, if you like, but we have to try and talk electronically. Like more of that has to happen. And we've started to do that as a party. And I think that should be expanded on and done much more. But we can't forget about the people that maybe don't do that. And I think that's what's happened as well. Where we've got better sending emails out from the central party, I know members in my branch they're not on email. So they feel completely removed.
I know one guy who's just got a landline and that's it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, guy.
Yeah, and we've got to be honest about this as well. It's like, you know, you're a branch chairman, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are branch chairmen or secretaries or whatever it is, you know, an officer of a branch, and they never really realise how much hard work it can be. You know, to do it properly, it takes up a lot of your time. And what really irritates me is that, given that that's the case, the central party doesn't support those people. So, you know, I want to see a situation whereby it's easy to get leaflets that aren't costing candidates loads of money. You know, that we've got our national policies on the front, and then on the back, they can be populated by the local branches or the local candidates at no cost to them, funded by the party for the candidates, because that's for the party. We've got to get that right. And our messaging is key, obviously. Big new policy ideas, that's what we want to see, interesting things. But all of those things going out, it's got to be the same. So if you're giving out uniformed templates, you know, everything looks the same in every part of the country. That's got to be what we do. You know, we don't want to see a situation where areas are kind of getting up to their own thing. And what they're doing could be dreadful. It could be like really bad leaflets. And I've seen some really bad leaflets, you know, with terrible graphics, terrible colours, terrible pictures and spelling mistakes. You know, all of these things are just basics we need to cut out. So obviously I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to try and work and redevelop the structure that we have. But we must make sure that that's fully supported by the central party. And also another thing that we'd like to introduce is like a Premier League, if you like, of branches. So by you as a branch chairman or an officer or as a member, you want to make your branch the best and you want to appear in the UKIP league table. And if, you know, if we have something like that, say the top 25 branches who are currently fighting for position, but they get more money for their campaigns and stuff like that. But if we boil this down and we start to think about how can we succeed as a party? How can we make sure that our message is consistent and always there and we've always got a footprint? The only way to do that is to build and concentrate on your branches and your local footprint.
So you've got your background in the military. What do you make of the current state of armed forces? Have you got any insight here to what the hell is going on?
So I served in the Royal Navy. I also served, unfortunately for me, I guess, in the Afghan War. So yeah, I have kind of a real-time working experience or working knowledge of being in the armed services and in defence to the armed services, pardon the pun, but it's improved. When I left, you know, that was at a time when soldiers were having to pay for their own body armour and stuff like that, and everybody wanted everything, you know, smelling of fresh paint, and they never really wanted the truth. And we operated on this system of the old stiff upper lip, you know, the British stiff upper lip, and that wasn't good enough because we were putting people's lives ultimately at risk. And I just think that defence is something that costs money, and you've got to be honest about that. If you want defence, it costs.
Hang on, you're buying your own body armour?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So in the second Iraq War, soldiers were ill-equipped and they were investing in their own.
Tony Blair got a lot of stick for this, didn't he?
He absolutely did. Yeah.
Didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah. No, it absolutely was. It was absolutely terrible. I mean, a little story for you. I was I was actually supporting the Sea Harriers, of which were in Iraq. So they were in theatre and they were operational. And at one point we had 2 aircraft which couldn't fly. And so that's fine, that happens. So they need a bit of equipment. So they came to me, who obviously I was responsible for the logistics for them. We didn't have it. I couldn't find it anywhere else in our fleet. I couldn't find it anywhere else in the RAF. So then I had to go to it's Abbey Wood, who were in charge of the logistics and the money and, you know, of equipment for the armed services. And they couldn't fund it. So I asked them, what do you mean you couldn't fund it? We have 2 aircraft in theatre for you, trying to fly, carrying out the government's bidding, if you like, and they're non-operational. And they said, unfortunately, we've spent this year's budget and next year's, we can't support that piece of equipment. And that was the state that we are in. Now, if you look now, roll the clock forward. It's gotten even worse.
I mean, with the austerity cuts and whatnot, I imagine it's
absolutely. I mean, that made a huge impact. But roll the clock forward now, we have, you know, one of the smallest air forces, if you like, in the world. You could fit all of our servicemen and women into Twickenham, I think is the stat. You know, Compare that to somewhere like North Korea. They have 1 million people in their army. That's just their army. You know, you look at the Russians, some of their equipment is phenomenal. Now, don't get me wrong, some of ours is also very good, but we have at the moment 19 operational surface flotilla. That's ridiculous. You know, if we had to do a Dunkirk again, we'd be doing it in fishing boats. You know, it would be worse than when we did it for real. You know, we're so unsupportive of our armed services. It's ridiculous. And it's interesting because my son is now in the process of joining the Paras. And, you know, and I'm worried about that in some respects, but I'm very proud that he's obviously doing that too. But we've got to make sure that UKIP is the party of the armed services, that we're the one speaking up for the men and women who serve us and their families, because obviously they play a huge part in supporting them to carry out their job.
I mean, I've been seeing, because talking about this, just like weird lack of funding or funding in places that don't really make sense. We've had exactly the same in the police force.
Yeah.
So I was at a rally the other day and it was mentioned that, I mean, we hire, what is it, like 900 officers just to look at like Twitter posts and Facebook posts to see if it's hate speech, which costs millions, and that's just for London. Yeah. I mean, never mind nationally how much we're wasting on stuff like that. And then we get constant moaning from the police like we don't have any funding. You know, the government's cut it all in the austerity cuts.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight on what's going on there as well? Because I know the military and the police usually have friends.
Yeah, I mean, there's some. Yeah, sometimes when you've served, there's a kind of, you know, a natural progression to join the police or something like that. So yeah, I mean, a good friend of mine is in the police where I live, and I do get some little inside stories here and there from what's going on. I won't go into them, but
no names, of course.
there's some real problems, and obviously there's this number of 20,000 officers being bandied around all the time. The fact is, we don't have enough police, and the problem with the police at the moment is, like you quite rightly say, they concentrate on the things which are quick wins, if you like, and things that they can win on and then get their stats up. And so our focus is all wrong. We need new, we need new officers. We need more officers, and we need to support the ones that we have. They can't do their job in fear of, you know, doing something wrong and getting hauled over the coals for treating someone badly or whatever. I mean, in some respects, the law is the law, and we've got to invest in that. You know, we've got to make sure that we've got a strong police force and that we support them in doing their job. I'd like to see more officers. I'd like to see more community-led policing, because I think that helps to negate some of the issues that we're currently experiencing. We've got this huge knife crime epidemic. Now, I'm not saying that more police are going to solve that, but if there's more sort of awareness of police being in the area, yes, people are going to think twice. But it's not just the police. I mean, our system, our legal system, if you like, is quite wrong. I mean, I don't believe in the death penalty. I do believe that, you know, there should be a life for life. The trouble is, if, for argument's sake, if you had the death penalty in this country, we'd see the same situation as America, whereby people would be appealing it, it would be costing millions, they'd be on death row for years, and I don't want that. And I'm telling you now, having served in the armed forces and been in some real rough conditions, our prisoners have got it easy. And what I'd like to see is a complete overhaul of our system, that it returns back into state ownership, because I think that's where the prison system should be, and it's an absolute nightmare place to go. You know, when you go to prison, you literally pack up your dignity and your rights and you put them in a bag outside the door. You know, I want prison to mean prison, hard time, you know. I don't want you to have access to social media, PlayStations, you know, the ability to form gangs, all of that. That has to stop. You know, I would much rather see you sat in your cell for sort of 20 hours of the day. Anything else you do is communal or watching telly, and you read books and you get a phone call. It has to completely change. So once we make prison a deterrent that it should be, then hopefully that might sort of reflect and change people's ideas when they think, oh, I'm just going to mug that granny because I need a tenner, you know, and they'll think twice about it.
It'll probably help with people going out and then committing again. What is it, the reoffending rate?
Well, the reoffending rate is obviously a real problem. We've put so much time, effort and money into the sort of rehabilitation of prisoners, and I mean, I don't know what the current stats are now, but I know that they're just terrible. Yeah. I mean, you know, it doesn't work. The percentage of prisoners that don't come out and don't reoffend, it's very, very low. That's a waste of resources. I
do want to ask you as well, because a lot of people are pointing out like the politicization of these institutions. I mean, like the police force is a perfect example, where you see them with like LGBT cars and things, you know, the guy wearing that massive LGBT suit and everything. And it's not an issue with like promoting homosexuality or anything like that. It's saying, look, this is a political issue. I mean, the Muslim mums in Birmingham won't agree with this. Therefore, should you be partaking in it?
Yeah.
And this then goes into the police cracking down on hate speech and things like this, spending all the time on it.
Yeah.
And we saw recently those paras shooting a picture of Jeremy Corbyn. I was wondering, what are the officers on the ground and people in the armed forces take on all this politicization? Do they actually go along with it, or do they think it's nuts, or what?
I think you'll find a lot of the time it's kind of split. So, and the split is bigger in the way of common sense, if you like. So all your ranks and all your ratings, they'll think in the same way as we do. And they think all of this is nonsense, and why are we doing it? It's the hierarchies that obviously implement this. And a lot of the time they do it because they just want career progression themselves. You know, they're trying to push these messages which are pushed down on them, look great, and get somewhere themselves. And it's all at the... basically the people at the bottom are paying the price for that. You talked about the LGBT stuff. I mean, no one really minds about the LGBT stuff. Let them do that, that's fine. They believe in that, they want to do it, no problem. But police are police. The police don't have to start redesigning and putting new stickers on their car at huge cost to the taxpayer. They just need to be police.
I remember, unironically, there was a police post about, we've redesigned our cars for LGBT week. And then someone asked, wait, didn't you just complain about funding cuts? He's like, oh, no, we used the diversity budget to pay for it. How do you mean you got a diversity budget? What's going on?
Sorry, that's the point's still the same, isn't it? You are wasting taxpayers' money. I mean, I'm not gay, but I'm sure that any gay person will feel if there's a normal or normally dressed police officer, they can still feel comfortable enough to go up to them. They don't need to change their epaulets and stuff like that. It's just nonsense. We're quite lucky in this country that we know that anyone can walk up to any police officer and you're kind of going to get a standard response. And isn't that what you want? We shouldn't be doing all these things and wasting public money on them.
Right, so this may seem like an odd one, but I did want to ask you about the media and how are UKIP going to deal with the media? Because we all know they're liars. I mean, for years, they have just hated UKIP. I mean, people get very angry about, Gerard Batten's made people in the media hate us even more. But I look back at the interviews Nigel had, and there was no easy going back then either. And just what would be your strategy? Would you engage more with new media? Would you hammer hard on the old media, or would you try and play nice and nice with them? Or what do you think?
I think what you have to strike is a combination. I think in recent times, where, say, Gerard hasn't wanted to talk to media and he now says in this campaign that he's not going to bother, whilst I understand his point, the problem is politics is the game and the game has its rules and we don't set them. So the media obviously play a part in that game and we have to interact with them. Yeah, it might be tough interviews and it might be, us getting a bit of stick for this, that and the other, but that is the game and we must be on that field. We must be playing it. Nigel did have some tough interviews, absolutely right. But the thing is, when you're not doing them, you're kind of off the radar. Social media is really important. The work that you guys do, it's brilliant, and that has to form a really big part of what we do. But it can't be the only thing, because even if we're getting a bad story in the press, the British have got this funny kind of psyche. It's like, oh, why are they being so horrible to them? And we could, off the back of that, get support. But we've got to be in the game, and I just feel at the moment that we're not. So let's move forward and let's have a real strong sort of combination of the both. But the only way we're going to do that is to bring guys like you on board. We have to run with our sort of really strong youth wing, get them involved, because you have all this technology and know-how. It's second nature to you. I mean, I'm an absolute dinosaur now when it comes to this stuff. So we've got to engage.
You're that old? I mean, you've got some grey, but you're not. How old are you?
I was 41 yesterday.
That's not old.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks. Here's that 10.
Well, we sort of tie this in with some of the more, like, I say, hot button topics within the party. I mean, Tommy's the divisive issue.
Yeah.
I mean, talking back to his trial, we were there, and you do hours and hours of just good fun, people of all different creeds, and just people having fun, and then the guilty verdict comes. So people got angry, they shouted at the police, they shouted at the media, because they perceived them as liars and traitors and blah, blah, blah. And then that's the one clip that goes out on BBC 6 o'clock news. He's far right, blah, 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 and then that's it. So they're smear merchants. I mean, they will just show that clip. Nothing else happened. He's just a nut job. So how do you directly deal with that? Do you try and distance yourself from people like Tommy? Or, do you just say, no, to hell with you guys, you're telling lies? What's your strategy?
Well, in my opinion on Tommy has never really changed. He talks about many of the things that we all agree with and we can't even dispute. You know, there's a lot of truth in what he talks about. One of my big frustrations about the whole Tommy kind of drive, if you like, is that as a party we completely failed. We dropped the baton and it was someone else was going to pick it up. And it's been Tommy, and he's taken a lot of stick, a lot of hits for doing so. But there's some really good people out there that are still doing it and kind of ride the waves quite well. Like Sammy Woodhouse is absolutely brilliant. I think she's great. Obviously she's a victim, but there's many others. But the problem for us is, like I say, I think we dropped the baton. We should have been...
No pun intended, huh?
No pun intended. but we should have been the party that was running with those things. One of the reasons I joined UKIP was because it was strong enough and brave enough to talk about things that people struggled with, but couldn't speak about. So we absolutely should have been talking about those things. I think that's a failure for UKIP. But the problem with Tommy, and of course it's proved hugely divisive in our membership, is I never thought that Tommy was the guy that should have been fighting that fight for us. I mean, he was doing that quite successfully for himself outside of us. I don't think the association with him ever really helped us as a party. It's probably damaged us more. You know, if we were, like I say, if we were driving that debate and we were talking about it without the use of clumsy language and stuff like that, I think it would have been more digestible to the British public. But you're right, the media are going to take any opportunity they can and use whatever clip they can or whatever little nugget of information to kick you. You've got to roll with the punches. There's nothing else that we can do on that front.
So you're not really saying you want to abandon the issues. I mean, you're saying, Tommy's a character who doesn't put the argument across, is your argument. You'd rather take it in like a Douglas Murray approach and be more official or palatable. I'm not quite sure the right way to say it.
Yeah.
This isn't an aspersion on Tommy. It's just, is this an accurate representation of what you want to do?
I would pretty much say that that's the way to do it. I mean, the Tommy issue is, I understand why Gerard wanted to obviously labour that and try and get him on board. I get that. We were looking for ideas to try and make us, more interesting and get onto topics that were problems. That's fine. But I think as a political party, we have now seen that the Tommy issue hasn't really helped us. He at the time, although he's been banned now, but had 1 million likes or followers on Facebook. And when his association started, that didn't really translate into new members for us. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's translated into support from certain people, that's fine. But in terms of membership, it didn't work. We're not even polling now, we're below 1%. Now, I'm not saying this is all to do with Tommy, but I think because, like you quite rightly said earlier, the mainstream media will pick up on things and then really go for them, and that's all they talk about. I think that's happened. And that's why we're paying the price for that. So the Douglas Murray approach would be a good one. I think that he's a great guy, and his arguments are really well reasoned, all factual, and sometimes very hard to try and argue against. And that's kind of where we should be, Tommy, at the football, he punched someone in the side of the head. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't provoked or he was, because clearly something went on. The trouble is, you can't just go and punch someone if you want to try and be in politics. And I think that's the problem, So we've got to be more reasoned. We've got to seem like we're not some sort of thug or whatever. And I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying I joined a political party, and with that, you've got to act in a certain way. And I'm not sure that he's up for that. So we've got to take his arguments and drive them forward. They have to be ones we talk about. They're important.
I'd like to ask you about the Brexit party, and we'll do this finally, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, we've spoken to pretty much everyone. People get mad about other characters taking away members and votes from UKIP, but if you look at the results, by constituency, people who voted for Brexit party MEPs are exactly the same people who voted massively for Leave. It seems to me like they've really stolen the thunder here.
Yeah.
So how does a Ben Walker UKIP steal back that thunder and say, no, you can't have this?
We've got to accept some hard truths about the Brexit fight and stuff like that. Obviously, we've got the birth of the Brexit party. I don't believe that they have any real longevity. And I do believe that this is more a process of Nigel prolonging his platform. And so, he can earn some money, he has his MEP ticket to use as that little sort of status sticker. And I think that's more what it's about. However, having said that, if he believes that he can influence Brexit so we actually get Brexit, and he can do it from inside of Brussels and he can use that platform, then power to his elbow. And I think we should be supportive of that. What UKIP now needs to be, I genuinely believe, is the party of post-Brexit, because they're not going to be around forever. And let's not be funny. It's not going to take long for Nigel to fall out with someone. It's not going to take long for all of these snakes that he's actually.
He already has. He got kicked out of that group, and then all his staff got, I think, laid off. So
I'll be honest about this. I mean, I was a couple of years ago when I ran for leadership then, but there were some real snakes in our party. And funny enough, where are all they now? They're in the Brexit party. So good. You're welcome to those guys, because they're absolutely no good to anybody, and all they do is they want money. Yeah, and so we're good. It's good. It's good they've gone. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad they've gone. But like I say, I think if Boris is elected, we're going to see Brexit in some way, shape, or form. And even if it's not the Brexit that we want, a full-out Brexit, Brexit will be delivered in the eyes of the general public, and the mainstream media will make it appear so. So then there's almost no need for the Brexit party again. So we've got to be ready. We've got to be organised, decent structure, decent policies, ready to go again, and pick up all that support that we've lent him.
Okay, I just want to say, worst case scenario, let's say, Boris doesn't get in, or Boris gets in and delays it, and then we have to fight a local election or something like that. How do you fight them? Because they will be standing in local elections if it isn't delivered. Yeah,
we've just got to be better than them. I'm really interested to see what policy. I know what policy Nigel's.
They've stolen a few of them already.
They've stolen a few, and he's obviously referred back to our 2015 manifesto. Great, good manifesto, but that was 2015. Things have moved on since then. So if you can't come up with any good ideas, then don't bother. But we've got to make sure that we absolutely do. We've got to have a full raft of policies that are really exciting, really different, and get, like I say, with local candidates, just make sure that we're better. Make sure that we're out there, we're working the areas, we're getting known, and that's how you'll win a local election. I mean, yes, they are going to pick up support for being being the Brexit party, but we've got to remember that the truth is, I don't even know how, with the people that he has involved in his party, you get to agree any policy. Anne Widdecombe, Nigel Farage, members of the Communist Party. How do you get these people to agree anything? Brexit, fine. You can say, yeah, we all believe in Brexit, and some little items off the sides of Brexit. But how are they going to agree stuff on sex education, housing, the economy? Right. How are they going to do this? Because I just can't see it. Okay. So good luck to them, I guess.
Ben Walker.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure.